Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, and I'm bringing you a review for Boruto Chapter 42. And I gotta say, so I knew about some of this chapter because of the spoilers, which I covered in another video, and like I predicted, the major spoiler that I came across was actually at the tail end of the chapter. So I was a little let down by that, but I gotta say, from a critical standpoint, that was a very brilliant way to end the chapter because it's keeping you reading. You don't know whether or not Sarada's surprise attack works. So with that being said, if you are an anime only viewer, this is the part of the month where I am going to be talking about spoilers and I am going to be doing the chapter review. So I thank you for your support. But if you guys want to read the Boruto manga and do so in a way that supports the channel, I'll leave links down in the description box for you guys to read the manga and help the channel out. But with that being said, if you're still here, I'm going to assume you're okay with me talking about spoilers. So I gotta say, I like the continued development with Boro. Okay, so I know somebody's like, development, he didn't go through a character arc. That's not necessarily what I'm getting at when I say development. More so what I'm getting at is the fact that we're seeing a evolution of how the strategy works with this character, and now we start seeing how his jutsu works, and we start seeing more of the weaknesses of it. And what I like about it is, in a way, this is actual character development. So where I'm coming from on this is, one way you can develop a character in a battle shonen is through the actual fights. I think most of us understand that. Okay, most of us understand that, you know, the fighting aspect, that's what makes a battle shonen so great. But one underrated aspect of what Kodachi tends to do, going as far back as the Boruto novelization that he did for the movie and the script that he did for the Boruto movie, which is simply this put right here. As these characters are fighting more, you're starting to see more of their hubris. You're starting to see their arrogance show up in some ways. And so when it comes to Boro, this guy is clearly stronger than Team 7. He's clearly got an overhacks ability, but now you start seeing the fact that he's over relying on that ability. And this actually fits into an overarching theme that I think a lot of people have missed when it comes to the Boruto series, which is the fact that this technology of scientific ninja tech is absolutely amazing. It literally takes people who would be fodder and it turns them into walking shinobi tanks. Like, they have some overhacks abilities, or they have the ability to use the shinobi gauntlet and use all types of jutsu. Or in the case of Boro, it allows him to regenerate no matter what it is that hits him. He's always able to come back, and it seems like every single part of his body is seemingly invincible. And it got to a point where I was thinking, okay, like, I know that Kishimoto was heavily influenced by Dragon Ball. I know that Ikimoto, when it comes to the art style and the way that the fights are drawn out, that Ikimoto's heavily influenced by Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball. But I was like, well, Kodachi has some influences in it, but Kodachi, when you read his writing, you can tell that he's influenced by quite a few different series. I'm like, where is he going with this? I'm trying to figure out as I'm reading it. And what I actually end up finding out is the fact that Boro, as well as other villains, their over reliance on the scientific ninja tech is ultimately their downfall, because the longer that the fight goes on, the more that Team 7 is able to realize, in particular Sarada is able to realize, that every time he weaves those hand signs, yes, it's to activate the regeneration jutsu, but it's also a disguise. I think that he's going to regenerate regardless of those hand signs, but he's activating those hand signs in order to move his core, in order to protect it. So his heart essentially is basically moving every single time he does those signs. And so I like the fact that, once again, you see the weakness in this, because he's thinking, I just need to outlast these brats, and then I'll be able to take them back to the Kara base. I'll be able to give Boruto and Kawaki to Jigen, and we can just move forward with our plan. Well, the great thing about this is the fact that Sarada's the one that picks up on it, and you see the growth in her character as well here. So Sarada realizes that, okay, this is going to be his downfall, but Sarada's like, well, I don't know necessarily how to take advantage of it. And she's saying, like, I can't use a massive fire style jutsu. When I try and use a shuriken, this guy used lava style in order to melt the shuriken I throw. I can't use basic lightning style jutsu. I can't use the she says the phoenix blossom jutsu, which is basically the phoenix flower jutsu, for those of you who are only aware with the English dub. But what I like about this moment right here is that Sarada immediately comes to realization, I know Chidori, I need to use it in this instance, but she's never actually used it in battle. She says she's still training to learn it. And like I covered in the chapter spoilers that came out, you know, I stated the fact that this isn't an ass pull. Sasuke's been taking the time to train Sarada, and like I stated in that spoiler review, basically the Boruto series has done what, if you're a Star Star Wars fan, you're well aware that even before Disney bought Star Wars, that when episode 1, 2, and 3 came out, that there were some moments where you're scratching your head when you're watching the movie, like with Anakin and Padme suddenly being into a relationship was kind of alluded. It might happen in Phantom Menace, but Anakin was so small, and you had to buy the visual guides before actually seeing the movie in order to piece those things together. And so it's something similar to this. It's something similar here, where Boruto's story is told in multiple mediums. It isn't just the anime, it isn't just the manga. You got to read the novels, you got to read some of the character profiles. There's quite a few different things that they do to tell the actual story. And what I like about this moment right here is that in the Sasuke Shinden novel, Sasuke is taking an active role in training Sarada. He's teaching her fire style jutsu, Uchiha, secret Uchiha shuriken jutsu that Boruto actually refers to it in the Majina Bandits arc fight. And then you also have Sasuke teaching Team 7 lightning release, and it's implied that Sasuke spent quite a bit of time training Sarada in lightning release. Well, it looks like one of those jutsu that Sasuke taught her was the Chidori. And what I like about this moment is that Sarada realizes that's her only way to use it. And for those of you who don't quite get why they went with that reference, well, essentially what you're seeing is that they're paying homage to, yes, obviously Sasuke using Chidori and being taught by his mentor, but the other thing is they're paying homage to two scenes from the Naruto franchise. So obviously you're paying homage to what you got with Fugaku teaching Sasuke the fire style jutsu. Like you obviously know that. But the other thing that I think some fans are missing is that this is also paying homage to how Naruto actually learned the Rasengan. So when it comes to the Rasengan, Naruto, when Jiraiya was training him, he was able to use incomplete versions of it. Okay, like when he tried to attack Tsunade, he made something close to Rasengan, and yet Jiraiya and Tsunade both said this is a far cry from the real thing. Naruto didn't actually manage to pull it off until when Tsunade put some pressure on him, and off screen it's implied that he actually finished it, but we see him use it for the first time and see him use it to its maximum capacity when his life is on the line and he's fighting to protect Tsunade from Kabuto. So what I love about this moment right here is that Sarada's in the same situation. Boruto's out of chakra. Mitsuki does still have another gear in him, but for whatever reason he doesn't use Sage mode, and Kawaki's running low on chakra as well. Sarada understands this is literally their one moment to try and take this guy out. And she uses Chidori, she charges forward, and it looks like she's gonna pierce Boro in his left flank, because that's currently where his core is, aka his heart. So I like that element right there. And when it comes to Sarada, another thing, if you guys read these chapters very closely, you'll see that they're once again alluding to other stuff that happens in the novels. That's why I cover so much stuff when it comes to Naruto Hida novels and the novels that come before the Boruto era, as well as what goes on during the Boruto era. That way when this stuff pops up in the chapters, I don't have to go as in detail about it. So if you'll notice in this chapter, okay, Sarada's constantly turning her Sharingan on and off, okay? The anime briefly alluded to the fact that she has severe stamina issues when it comes to using her Sharingan. And like I was talking about before, in the Itachi Shinden novel, if I'm not mistaken, it is either the, no matter of fact, I know it's the Daylight novel, you have a scene where Izumi Uchiha, which I covered on a video on my original channel Kryptonian Saiyan, which I'll probably end up remaking to put it on this channel, that way all the Naruto content is on one channel. But I go over a scene where Izumi reveals that because she's only half-blood Uchiha, because her mother did not marry somebody from within the clan, the Kekkei Genkai isn't as strong with her, and so when she uses the Sharingan, it eats away at her chakra at a rapid rate. So essentially she's got the same problem that Kakashi had, but in Izumi's case you can argue that it's a lot worse than Kakashi, because just activating it and scaring off some classmates made Izumi faint, okay? Even when the Uchiha massacre was getting ready to go on, Izumi couldn't maintain the Sharingan for a long period of time. So what I like about this moment right here is that Sarada understands she can't just have the Sharingan active the entire time like you would have seen Kakashi once his chakra reserves were built up, or like Itachi or like Sasuke. So what she does is she's constantly switching that Sharingan on and off. This is the same thing they've been doing for about 3 chapters now. I believe it's chapter 39 when she first debuts her 3 Tomoe Sharingan. And so she's only using the Sharingan in brief moments, okay? And what I like about this moment right here is that when she does use the Sharingan, Sharingan, she maximizes the potential and she cuts it off, and then you see the trade-off in it. So when she uses Chidori and she's charging forward, you actually see one of her eyes beginning to close, and it's because Chidori requires you to not only build up an incredible amount of chakra, and so for a character like Sarada, who does not have a high chakra reserve, Sarada's building up an immense amount of chakra in her hand. She's also burning a lot of chakra in order to move at the high speed levels that are required in order to pull off the Chidori, but you also have to have the Sharingan Eye Insight active, because if you don't have the Sharingan Eye Insight active, the jutsu is essentially useless. That's what Minato told to Kakashi during the Third Great Ninja War. That's why Kakashi couldn't fully use the Chidori until he actually had Obito's eye. So what you see with Sarada with her eye closing, it's one of two things is going to happen here. One, it's possible that because she only has one eye on the core and that the other one's in the process of closing, Boro might be able to move his core. I don't think that's the case. I think Sarada hit him. But the other thing is you also have the potential that because her eye is closing, in that brief moment, Boro might be able to counterattack. So I like the fact that the chapter ended off with that little bit right there, because there's so many different ways you can open up the next chapter. You could open up with a scene completely different of this here, where it deals with the other characters in Konoha. But the other thing is it also opens up the door for Sarada to potentially land a killing blow. It also opens up a door for Sarada to have a counterattack sprung on her. So I like this touch right here. I thought this was really good. Now, the other thing that I want to kind of talk about before I move on to Boruto and Kawaki, because there's quite a bit of a reveal here, and it's something you might skip over if you just, because this is an action heavy chapter. So if you just read everything and you take in the fight scenes, you're gonna likely miss what I'm gonna go over in a second. But what I also like in this moment is that with Boro, one thing that, you know, myself and a few other people have theorized in private, it actually kind of gets confirmed here. So essentially Boro is a lot like Cell from Dragon Ball, where you have to destroy his core, okay? And so for Cell, you had to destroy every single last cell in his body, okay? Hence the name. Otherwise, he will be able to essentially regenerate himself. So for Boro, it's not necessarily the same thing. You don't have to destroy his entire body. You just need to locate where his core is. Now, if you don't have the Sharingan, you cannot see chakra as a color, which means that you are not going to be able to locate where his core is at that exact moment. So I liked it again. Essentially, if you don't have that skill set, then you would have to just blow his entire body off. And what you see with Boruto and Kawaki is that for as powerful as they are, they don't possess enough destructive power in order to pull off a feat like that. Like Kawaki and Boruto, even working in unison, can only destroy a good portion of his upper body. Kawaki by himself can destroy almost the same amount. So you see a bit of a difference when it comes to Karma Amped Boruto and Karma Amped Kawaki. Granted, Boruto's a little lower on chakra at this point, but the point's still there. There's a difference in power when it comes to Boruto and Kawaki. So I like, just from a aspect right there, you're seeing some clear scaling. Okay, now the other thing when it comes to Boruto and Kawaki that I absolutely love when it comes to this chapter is that when the chapter opens up, you see Kawaki, he's rushing after Boro, so it's picking up where the last chapter left off, and Boro is going for Naruto where Naruto's in that cookie jar, okay? And what you end up seeing is that Boro gets this smart idea to use Naruto as a decoy, which is something that I alluded to in the last chapter review, that I feel like he's essentially going after Naruto in order to break this team formation that Team 7 has going on, that Sarada worked so carefully in order to come up with. So what you see in this moment is that Boro actually jumps over the cookie jar, okay? I know it's not a cookie jar, but I know it's a teapot, but I call it a cookie jar because I'm making fun of Naruto, okay? But here's the thing, right? As he jumps over, he has these shuriken. The shuriken are laced with gunpowder, and so essentially if Kawaki does not tank the attack, the explosion goes off. It could potentially destroy the jar that Naruto's in, and so that means that Naruto could be damaged. Like, they made very clear that if anything happens to that teapot, if anything happens to it, that Naruto's going to be damaged on the inside. Like, Naruto's essentially helpless. And again, I like this moment right here because it's showing us that for as powerful as Naruto is, he's still in a position where he has to rely on others. So it's continuing that whole theme with Asura and with Indra. So I like that moment right there. Now, the other thing is that you see more development in Kawaki and just how his time in Konoha has truly changed him. But while Boro does allude to that, Kawaki himself actually says something that could be a bit of foreshadowing. So essentially, when Kawaki is telling Sarada about how Amato works with scientific ninja tools, and he says, like, for the car members, the more powerful the ninja tool is, the bigger the weakness it is, and the fact that they all, even though their bodies are augmented, they all have to have a core somewhere, and that's the true weakness of the scientific ninja tool. And when Kawaki refers to the members of Kara, he specifically states that all members of Kara have their bodies remodeled by this guy named Amato, including me. And so what's interesting about that is that Kawaki includes himself when he's talking about Kara. It could just be with the scientific ninja tools, but the thing is I think that this is actual setup for the fact that Kawaki at some point is going to be returning back to Jigen, aka Ashiki Asusuki, and that there is some potential that Kawaki is going to have to rejoin Kara at some point. So even if it's as the property of Kara, he's going to have to eventually return. I think that that is something that wasn't just put there in accident, because the chapter opens up with Boro talking about how Kawaki needs to be retrained, how Kara's basically gonna re-break this guy, and talking about the difference in him. And yet one of the things that we've seen in Naruto is that in some aspects you cannot escape your destiny. Like Neji was always gonna be destined to give his life for the main branch. So I like that you're seeing some aspects, for better or for worse, being brought back in this. Now, the other thing I like about this is that Boruto, when faced with the prospect that Kawaki would essentially have himself taken back to Kara and that he himself will be going, Boruto flat out states that Kawaki's now citizen of Konoha. And you see the familiarity just continuing to raise up when it comes to Boruto, because Boruto has been, for the last couple of chapters, referring to Kawaki as bro or brother. And so I like this interaction here, because on Boruto's part, it is showing some growth in his character, because Boruto was a bit stubborn early on when it came to Kawaki. But the other thing about Boruto that you get in this chapter is that Boruto's using shadow clones, he's using Sharingan, he's using some of his more advanced taijutsu movements, and yet the thing that we see is that Boruto, when it comes to fighting, Boruto has a limited chakra pool. I know he's gotten more powerful, I know that using the karma seal amps up his power, but we don't know whether or not it's actually something that drains on his stamina. But I like the fact that they're continuing to show us that yes, this new Team 7, they're incredibly skilled, but they don't have the power to always back up what they're doing. Now, Chidori is a completely different monster, okay? If you have enough speed, you're going to be able to assassinate somebody. That's the whole purpose of it. So for Sarada, if she pulls this off, I get Sarada a pass, because that's essentially what the jutsu was created for. But like when it comes to Boruto runs out of his chakra very quickly. So I like that, because again, this is something we've seen every single arc in the Boruto manga. Like Boruto never really defeats anybody on his own. He's always had assistance, and Boruto has clear physical limitations. He isn't a chakra stamina powerhouse like Naruto was. So you could chalk it up to he's got recessive genes, whatever it is you want to be. Because just because his father has those strong Uzumaki genes, just because Hinata is a Hyuga, does not mean that Boruto's going to inherit his father's genes. There's a strong chance. Nowhere in the official canon is it stated that, oh, the Hyuga clan have massive chakra reserves. It's never stated. So we can't jump to that conclusion. So I mean, Boruto having average reserves just means when it comes to genetic lottery, he may have gotten Naruto's looks, but he didn't necessarily get everything about Naruto. So I like this trade-off that you're getting right here. But the other thing, and like the final thing, is when it comes to Mitsuki, I feel like they do need to address this at a certain point. Why is Orochimaru telling him to not use his full power? He has that sage mode. So I want to know, is there going to be a cost for him using it, or is this simply because he doesn't want Konoha to know that Mitsuki has a sage mode? If that's the case, what makes this different than anything else? Like I really want to know, because Orochimaru's on working terms with Konoha, so I want to know what the bigger picture on that is. I mean, overall this was a good chapter. My big critique, if I had to critique the chapter, and I held off on doing this because I said I was going to give Ikimoto a pass, but I said, you know what, I'm not going to do that. So my big complaint with the chapter is that I feel like when it comes to some of the fight sequences, and I know this is nothing new for those of you who have watched my chapter reviews in the past, I feel like some of the fight sequences were a little clunky. I feel like some of them were clunky. There were a few panels where there was great follow through, but if you go back, and I tweeted out some really great examples, like with the Itachi and Sasuke fight, how every single little detail from the shuriken being pulled out the holster to the direction it's being flicked in to the actual curve of the shuriken, how everything's bouncing off of everything, how the movements are very fluid from the way that the eyes are shifting and reacting in real time. Like, this is something Ikimoto, he's got to step it up. He's got to step it up. Like, his artwork has improved, okay? His artwork's improved, but I mean, we're going on to 4 years now that the manga has been running. And for those who say, well, Kishimoto just wasn't an absolute genius when he came out. No, but when you get to 4 years into the series, go back and read some of the Sasuke retrieval arc. That should be 4 years from when the Naruto manga first popped off. When you get into the Sasuke retrieval arc, the action sequences, the way they were drawn, there was a lot more detail. Like, Ikimoto, he's got to step this one up. He's got to step this one up. Like, there are a few panels in there that shows you that, okay, Ikimoto does have the talent to it, but the thing is, it's like, I'm really wondering if he was actually the correct choice when it comes to handing off this manga, because Ikimoto at times has stated, okay, he stated at times that he does have some issues when it comes to making the deadline, and that he's absolutely relieved that the Boruto manga is not on a weekly basis because he isn't sure he will be able to keep up with that workload. And this is what has me a little bit worried, because I thought it was more of a stylistic choice, but I think it very well could be the fact that Ikimoto is just pressed for fucking time. And like I've covered in why the Boruto manga isn't weekly, Ikimoto actually has more time, and it isn't because he is on a monthly schedule, but it's because he doesn't have to come up with the story. Literally, the story is given to him by Kodachi, Kishimoto checks over it as the editor, and then Ikimoto goes through and does the drawing. So literally, he doesn't have to do the research part that Kishimoto had to do. And if Kishimoto could do a chapter in 10 days, and I know the chapters come out every 7 days, but mangaka are on a 10-day schedule, and the chapters are always being proofed before they come out. But when you look at this, I'm wondering if this is just because Ikimoto can't keep up with the volume, and so he cuts corners. And if that's the case, that would explain why, again, this isn't just my critique. This is the director of the Boruto anime, as well as one of the producers, that states that adapting Ikimoto's fight sequences are really difficult because of the lack of detail. So my chapter question to you guys is gonna be twofold. How do you feel about Amato's scientific ninja tools having a weakness? Do you think it's a good idea to have this trade-off of scientific ninja tool power, being that there's a massive weakness with them? And the other question I have is, how do you feel about Ikimoto now that we're going almost 4 years? It'll be 4 years in April. So how do you feel his art's progressed? I acknowledge his art has gotten better, but in particular, how do you feel his fight sequences have been done? But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.